Hey guys, it's Jasper. Today I'm going to be reading you a story that I love from the Brothers Grimm collection of fairy tales called Fitcher's Bird. For today's fairy tale, I will be enjoying a nice red wine. Cute little bowl on it. Just sipping some wine. So as always, get yourself comfortable and pour yourself something nice to drink. Red wine seems fitting as the Brothers Grimm is often gruesome and bloody and gory, and so yum. Cheers. Once upon a time, there was a wizard who used to disguise himself as a poor man and go begging from door to door in order to capture pretty girls. No one had any idea what he did with them, for they would disappear without a trace. One day, the wizard appeared at the door of a man with 3 beautiful daughters. He looked like a poor, weak beggar and had a basket strapped to his back, as if he were collecting alms. When he asked for something to eat, the eldest girl came to the door to give him a crust of bread, and all he did was touch her, and she had to jump right into his basket. Then he made long legs and hurried away back to bring him to his house, which was in the middle of a dark forest. Everything in the house was splendid. The wizard gave the girl everything she wanted and told her, "Dearest, I'm sure you'll be happy here with me, for you'll have whatever your heart desires." After a few days had gone by, he said, "I have to go on a trip, and will leave you alone for a short while. Here are the keys for the house. You can go anywhere you want. Look around at anything you want, but don't go in the room which this little key opens. I forbid it under punishment of death." He also gave her an egg and said, "Carry it with you wherever you go, because if it gets lost, something terrible will happen." She took the keys and the egg and promised to do exactly as he had told her. After he left, she went over the house from top to bottom, taking a good look at everything in it. The rooms were filled with glittering silver and gold, and she thought that she had never seen anything so magnificent. When she finally got to the forbidden door, she was about to walk right past it when curiosity got the better of her. She inspected the key and found that it looked just like the others. Putting it in the lock, she turned it just a little bit and opened the door. Imagine what she saw when she entered. In the middle of the room, there was a big basin full of blood. And in it, there were chopped up pieces of dead bodies. Next to the basin was a block of wood with a gleaming axe on it. She was so horrified that she dropped the egg she was holding into the basin. Even though she took it right out and wiped off the blood, it didn't help. The stain came right back. She wiped and scraped, but it just wouldn't come off. It wasn't long before the man returned from his journey, and the first thing he asked for were the key and the egg. She gave them to him, but she was trembling, and when he saw the red stain, he knew that she had been in the bloody chamber. "You went into the chamber against my wishes," he said. "Now you will go back in against yours. Your life has reached its end." He threw her down, dragged her into the chamber by her hair, chopped off her head on the block, and hacked her into pieces so that her blood ran down all over the floor. Then he tossed her into the basin with the others. "Now, I'll go get the second one," said the wizard. He went back to the house dressed as a poor man, begging for charity. When the second daughter brought him a crust of bread, he caught her, as he had the first, just by touching her. He carried her off, and she fared no better than her sister. Her curiosity got the better of her. She opened the door to the bloody chamber, looked inside, and when the wizard came back, she had to pay with her life. The man went to fetch the third daughter, but she was clever and sly. After handing over the keys and the egg, he went away, and she put the egg in a safe place. She explored the house and entered the forbidden chamber. And what did she see? There in the basin were both of her sisters, foully murdered and chopped into pieces. But she set to work gathering all the body parts and put them back where they belonged: heads, torsos, arms, and legs. When everything was in place, the pieces began to move and to knit back together. Both girls opened their eyes and came back to life. Overjoyed, they kissed and hugged. On his return home, the man asked right away about the key and the egg. When he was unable to find a trace of blood on the egg, he declared, "You have passed the test. You shall be my bride." He no longer had any power over her and had to do her bidding. "Very well," she replied, "but first you must take a basket full of gold to my father and mother, and you must carry it on your back. In the meantime, I'll be making plans for our wedding." She ran to her sisters, whom she had hidden in a little room, and said, "Now is the time when I can save you. That brute will be the one who carries you home, but as soon as you get back there, send for help for me." She put both girls into a basket, covered them with gold until they were completely hidden. Then she summoned the wizard and said, "Pick up the basket and start walking. But don't you dare stop along the way. I'll be looking out my little window, keeping an eye on you." The wizard put the basket up on his shoulders and started walking with it. But it was so heavy that sweat began to pour down his forehead. He sat down to rest for a while, but within moments, one of the girls cried out from the basket, "I'm looking out my little window, and I can see you resting. Get a move on." Whenever he stopped, the voice called out, and he had to keep going until finally, gasping for breath and groaning, he managed to get the basket with the gold and with the two girls in it back to the parents' house. Meanwhile, the bride was preparing the wedding celebration, to which she had invited all of the wizard's friends. She took a skull with grinning teeth, crowned it with jewels and a garland of flowers, carried it upstairs, and set it down at an attic window, facing to the outside. When everything was ready, she crawled into a barrel of honey, cut open a feather bed, and rolled around in the feathers until she looked like a strange bird that no one could have recognized. She left the house, and on her way, she met some wedding guests who asked, "Oh, Fitcher's bird, where from, where from?" "From feathered Fitcher's house I've come." "And the young bride there, how does she fare?" "She swept the house all the way through, and from the attic window, she's staring down at you." She then met the bridegroom, who was walking back home very slowly. He asked, too, "Oh, Fitcher's feathered bird, where from, where from?" "From feathered Fitcher's house I've come." "And the young bride there, how does she fare?" "She swept the house all the way through, and from the attic window, she's staring down at you." The bridegroom looked up and saw the decorated skull. He thought it was his bride, nodded, and waved to her. But when he got to the house and his guests, the brothers and the relatives who had been sent to rescue the bride were already there. They locked the doors to the house so that no one could get out. Then they set fire to it, and the wizard and his crew were burned alive. Fairy tales are so much fun. Fairy tales, there's so much blood. So there's so many things to love about that story. But one of the things I think that caught my attention the first time I read it is that as a fairy tale critique, you hear a lot of criticism about specifically the Brothers Grimm fairy tales being very misogynistic. There's not really good, feminist narratives. And when I read Fitcher's Bride for the first time, Fitcher's Bird, sorry, not Fitcher's Bride, Fitcher's Bird, who was a bride, Fitcher's Bird, who was a bride. When I read Fitcher's Bird for the first time, I was just like, this is an amazing story. And the heroine she's just that, she's a heroine. She is smart and clever, and there's so many things to love it. So let me break down my love for Fitcher's Bird just a little bit. So, of course, you have in the story, the first sister who is, stupid and naive, but probably like most of us, does things the way most of us would. And the second sister, the same thing happens. But we have the third sister, who is the youngest sister, who is the least, especially for this time period. The youngest, nobody cares about the youngest. The youngest, they're nothing. They have no prospects, and who cares about them, especially if you have, your two other sisters who aren't married yet. Nobody cares about you. No one's noticing you. And so you have an underdog story. She's at the very bottom. She's the last sibling, and she's the one who comes out on top and is the heroine. The next thing that is so cool is that she does just the most basic thing, which is, instead of carrying that egg around with her, which, you're going to break it, she puts it down in a safe place and is like, all right, now I'm going to explore. Then she pieces her sisters back together. She finds their bodies, their bloody bodies in this bloody chamber. She finds them, puzzle pieces them back together, which, yes, it doesn't necessarily make sense, but it's a fairy tale, and that's what fairy tales are for, the fantastic and the wild and the crazy strange. It's no fun if you can't, live in a world where you puzzle piece your sisters back into life. So she puts them back together and then hides them. And then when Fitcher, the wizard, comes home, he's all like, you passed the test and you get to be my bride. And instead of being like horrified, because it's like, yay, I passed your test and now I get to be your bride. First you kidnapped me and now this? Man, living with you is awesome. Instead of showing, how she actually feels, she disguises it and just like, oh my gosh, I've always wanted to marry, a kidnapper. This sounds amazing. And, she just says, I'm going to take care of the house. I'm going to take care of the wedding things. But you need to, pay my bride price. And for some reason in the fairy tale, it says, now Fitcher is under her spell. So whatever she asks of him, he has to complete. And maybe this has something to do with, that she's promised himself and herself to him, and she's gonna become his bride. So now he is under her spell. So she says, you gotta pay my bride price, and you're gonna take these sacks of gold, and I'm just gonna be a good little future wifey and clean the house and get ready for our wedding because I am so excited. So then she prepares the basket herself, puts her sisters in, covers it with gold. So not only is she liberating her sisters, she's making her captor deliver them home. And then she sets up the whole security of like, hey, I'm watching you from my little window, which the sisters just cry out every time he stops. Not only does she have the sisters sent home, gold brought to her parents' house, so they're coming out up on top, but she also has a reason to send him away and, prepare. So then she invites all of his wizard friends, because sure, she could have just had her brothers come and ambush the house and they could have just killed, this evil wizard. But she thought, this guy, he's awful. And I bet, because everyone has a community, I bet he has a community of people he really just meshes well with. And so let's invite them all over, because it's a wedding, it's a celebration, so that works. I'm going to make a makeshift bride and then disguise myself as a ginormous bird, which is such a great, strange part of the story, and just be able to walk right out of there. And then my brothers who have come back, they're going to, set fire to the house, and we're not just gonna kill this one wizard who, you know, chopped up my sisters and I had to puzzle piece them back together and captured me, but we're gonna kill all his evil wizard friends. And won't that be good? Not just for our family and, you know, revenge and this sort of thing, but for the community as a whole. So I like how well-rounded she is in her dealing with the wizard. And I also like that she doesn't do everything herself. It's very powerful to me that she delegates the work. She organizes everything. She's certainly the orchestrator. She was wise, she put down the eggs, she puts her sisters back together, but she sends Fitcher to bring her sisters home and bring gold. She asks her sisters, you know, to take a part and is doing the, hey you, I see you from my little window, keep on moving, don't stop. She has her sisters do that, and then she has her sisters send for her brothers, so that way they can just be waiting outside the house and she can just make a clean exit, you know, dipped in her honey goo. But she arranges things, she orchestrates things, but she doesn't have to do it all herself. And I think that's very important, because there's a lot of stories where our heroines or heroes, they are the ones who can save the world, and it has to be themselves. They alone can do it. It's a very kind of you know, popular motif, especially with the superheroes. You know, they are the all-powerful ones who are here to save the world. But that's not the case with the story. You have a really strong, really wise, really clever heroine who knows that there is great wisdom in delegation. Other than that, other than this awesome, I would argue, you know, feminist character, really awesome heroine, there's also just this strange, odd details with this wizard who is stealing girls and has it in his head that, like, you know, what a perfect way to test out a future wife is leave her home with your keys, and, you know, if she goes in, then you get to chop her up and put her in the jars, but if not, she passes the test, and now she's gonna be so excited she gets to marry you. There's a weird, like, non-awareness with the wizard, and that's interesting and terrifying. The graphic but blunt violence is also very interesting. It doesn't delve into, you know, an enormous amount of detail, but at the same time delivers a very sharp image. And I love that the way she escapes is by dipping herself in this huge vat of honey and then rolling around in feathers, and people pass her and they're just like, hey, Fitcher's bird, what's going on? Where are you from? And she's all like, oh, you know, from Fitcher's feathered house I come. And everyone buys it. They're just like, ah, it's a giant bird. Hey, giant bird, how's the bride doing? You know about her, right? And she's like, oh yeah, for sure. She's sweeping the house, classic Cinderella, you know, move, just cleaning top to bottom. And hey, look, she's staring out at the window at you. Isn't that precious? She's so sweet. Anyways, happy wedding time. I mean, you're not gonna, the house isn't gonna burn down. Enjoy the time. Yeah, it's a fun story. I like it a lot. I hope that you guys enjoyed that story tonight. Again, as always, if there are stories that you'd like me to read, comment down below what those stories are. And have a wonderful, wonderful evening, day, whatever the time of something is, and whatever you've been drinking, I hope it's been good. Cheers.
Oh, Fitcher's feathered bird, where from? From feathered Fitcher's house I've come. And the young bride there, how does she fare? She swept the house all the way through, and from the attic window she's looking at you.